All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, several weeks ago, things were tighter in the National League wildcard race as everyone except the Colorado Rockies and Miami Marlins, for the most part, were within a game or two of the final playoff berth in the NL. There are still several teams within a whisper of that final spot, but there has been a little bit of distance created since then. We've seen the recent surge by the New York Mets. I know that the Mets lost today, but they found themselves right in that mix. The St. Louis Cardinals are quietly going out there and winning games, and not only are they in the mix for a wild card berth, they're breathing down the necks of the Milwaukee Brewers for the top spot in the Central. CJ, what's going on, my friend? Happy Sunday. The recent slump, okay, by the San Diego Padres, that has them on the outside looking in currently, okay? You got the defending NL champs, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're right there. They're a game behind the Mets right now for the final playoff spot on the National League side. You look at the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates are just a game and a half back. They go into the All-Star break on a 4-game winning streak. You've got the San Francisco Giants and Cincinnati Reds, both 3 games back. And then you got the Chicago Cubs, who were stumbling, and now the Cubs have turned it on. I know right now they're 3.5 back out. Okay, so you look at it. You got the Nationals right there. They're 6 games out. I'm not buying them. They've already basically said that they're going to be sellers. Okay. But you look at this thing and it got very interesting very quickly. You look at the overall National League wild card race right now. You've got the Braves. They have a comfortable 4-game cushion over St. Louis right now for the top wild card spot. And I think the Braves more than likely are going to get that. I know that they got it down to single digits as far as their division deficit against the Philadelphia Phillies, but they still got a tiger by the tail. I mean, the Braves have some injuries right now that they're still dealing with. I still say at the end of the day, they're going to be a playoff team, but they've got their work cut out for them. CJ, you're saying, I am good. I know this is unlikely to happen, but I wish during the All Star break, the Braves extend Max Fried. I'll tell you like this, though. Sometimes over the break, when you've got that little lull, that's kind of, maybe a point where, team and player can work on a deal. Doesn't happen that often, okay, but there is a possibility of it. But nonetheless, the Braves still are going to be in a good position to be in the postseason. St. Louis right here. I think the Cardinals, they've been a bit of a surprise this first half. To me, I think they played better than I expected them to. Of course, a lot of chaos last year. Things went south for St. Louis very quickly, but nonetheless, the Cardinals are right in that mix. The Mets, and this is a very interesting scenario because we saw the Mets get off to that slow start. The Mets turned it around, okay, and then they were bad, okay, for the month of May. I mean, very bad. And, they've gotten things turned around. And it's very interesting because there was a good possibility that the Mets were going to be sellers, okay, at the trade deadline. And I think now the Mets are definitely going to be buyers. We just saw them add one bullpen arm. The Mets definitely need another bullpen arm. If they could find a starting pitcher, that would be great too, from the standpoint that the Mets, their starters need to go deeper into the games to give that bullpen some relief. But that bullpen, it's been up and down. And right now it's been a little bit more down than it's been up. But nonetheless, the offense for the Mets has been there. We've seen what Francisco Lindor is doing, the return of Francisco Alvarez. Mark Vientos is getting consistent at bats. JD Martinez in that lineup as well. So I definitely think that the Mets are going to be buyers in this thing. And right now, they're if the season ended right now, they would be a playoff team, the last wild card berth on the National League side. And whoever gets that final spot, you got to be very optimistic going into the playoffs. Why? Because the last 2 teams that got into the World Series for the National League were wild card teams. The Diamondbacks last year, and of course the Philadelphia Phillies from the year before. And then you look at the teams on the outside end right now. You got Arizona and San Diego both a game out. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do. The Pittsburgh Pirates break up the Pirates, and this team, this organization, they've been down on their luck for quite some time now, and I think it's a feel-good story. We've seen with Paul Skeens with what he has meant to that Pittsburgh Pirates pitching staff. Of course, we know he's going to start for the National League on Tuesday night in the All-Star game. But, maybe the Pirates can put it together in the second half and get into the postseason. You look at the Giants right there, and it hasn't been pretty at times for San Francisco. They're 47-50, but they're right in the mix. Okay, they're only 3 games back. You got the Reds right there at 47-50 as well. They're 3 games back, and then there's the Chicago Cubs. I think after the way that the Cubs finished last year, and then of course bringing in Craig Counsell as their skipper for this year, they expected Chicago to take that next step. It has not been that way. Just about a week ago, the Cubs were flirting with going 10 games under 500, but here at the break, they're 47-51, and anything can happen. Maybe the Cubs get into the mix, and maybe they're buyers. We have to wait and see. So you look at it, and one question for me is going to be which teams are going to be most aggressive ahead of the trade deadline. I think for sure, definitely the Mets will be. You look at Steve Cohen. He's a guy that since he has purchased this franchise, you know, he's never been one to shy away from going out there and making big moves. And I know David Stearns is his president of baseball ops, but if they feel like they can get him, they can get a guy that's going to help them get to the postseason. I think the Mets do it. The San Francisco Giants, I think, could be active as well, as could the Chicago Cubs. But I think a lot is going to be telling from the next week or so. And then you look at it, some of these teams face each other coming out of the break next weekend. You got the Diamondbacks and Cubs getting together for a 3-game set at Wrigley. The Pirates host the Philadelphia Phillies. And I know Philly took it on the chin today, courtesy of Oakland, but nonetheless, you still got a Phillies team that is currently 62-34. The Cincinnati Reds, they take on the Washington Nationals. And like I said, Washington, for the most part, is basically thrown in the towel. Will the Reds be able to take advantage of that? Speaking of taking advantage, the Mets will be in Miami to take on the Marlins. The last time that the Mets went to Miami to take on the Marlins this year was not pretty for them. Can they take advantage of facing a team that is 30 games under 500 at the break? For San Diego, they got to travel to take on the Cleveland Guardians, the first place Guardians from the American League Central. That is a very tough task for the Padres to kick off the second half of the season. CJ, something I know that you're going to be interested in. The Cardinals will be in Atlanta taking on the Braves this coming weekend. Big time series for both of those clubs. You've got the Giants traveling to Denver to take on the Rockies. And so it's like all of these teams, they have their work in front of them, and it's going to come down to who will answer the bell or not. That's going to be the big thing. But I think the rest of this month is going to be very telling as far as, who's going to improve their chances. Also, at the same time, like I said before, when the postseason was expanded, that adding that additional wild card spot in each league, it's going to be one of those things where, it's going to make less teams go out there and be sellers at the trade deadline because more teams feel like they have a legit shot to get to the postseason. So it's going to be very interesting to see who can make that move, who's going to counter move, and so forth, trying to give themselves the best possible chance to get to the postseason. But nonetheless, this is what it's about. It's that excitement coming down the stretch. All of these teams, they got about 60 some odd games to go between now and the end of the regular season. About 100 games have been put in the book rather quickly so far this year. Seems like, it was just opening day, and here we are at the All-Star break. And before we know, it's really going to be stretch run time in the regular season in Major League Baseball. But nonetheless, an exciting first half so far. You look at this wild card race in the National League side. I think it's going to come down to the end. Clearly, you got the three spots right now held by the Braves, the Cardinals, and the Mets. I think, barring something unforeseen, okay, I think out of all of those three teams that I just mentioned, I think Atlanta's a lock. But then you still got St. Louis and you've got the Mets. And the way that St. Louis is playing right now, it wouldn't surprise me to see them pull something out. The Mets, I think, are going to be the ultimate wild card. I think at some point San Diego gets back on track. Maybe Arizona can get hot like they did coming down the stretch last year. And what's going to happen with Pittsburgh, San Francisco, and Chicago? We've got to wait and see. But nonetheless, I think this second half of this MLB season is going to be very exciting, and it's going to be very interesting to see which teams can put it together on the National League side to get to the playoffs. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. CJ, as always, my man, definitely appreciate you chiming in. Definitely appreciate the comments and keep checking me out on this channel, my man. And as always, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off. And I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.